The Disney parks across the US are some of the most well-themed parks in the world, with 6 of them located in both California and Florida. I've had the pleasure of visiting all 6 of them, and most of them within the last year. The parks aren't really known for having amazing coasters, but there are 15 of them across the 6 parks, with a few of them even opening in the last couple of years. These more modern coasters have actually really impressed me with their combination of theming and thrills, and one of them even made my top 10 overall roller coasters. This list will also only include operating roller coasters, so sadly no Primeval Whirl, but I did ride that when it was still open. So without further ado, let's get right into the ranking. At number 15 is Disneyland's Vekoma Kiddie Coaster, Chippendale's Gadget Coaster. Not too much of a surprise here, with this just being a standard clone Vekoma Junior coaster, with clones at Tokyo Disneyland and Kentucky Kingdom, among others. It's located in a nice section in the back of the park, Mickey's Toontown, which is one of the best dark rides in the park also, with Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. Other than that, it has some decent theming around the ride, and it was just recently rethemed to Chippendale after being Gadget's Go Coaster since it opened. At number 14 is another Vekoma Kiddie Coaster, this time at Magic Kingdom with Barnstormer. This one does have a different layout than our previous coaster, but it's still very similar. But I do like it being themed around Goofy a bit more. The trains also look like planes, and you go through a few buildings as you're learning to fly around the Storybook Circus section of the park. You also get fantastic views of Tron from the queue line, which is a nice feature. Other than that, it's honestly a little janky, since it's one of the older coasters at the parks, and obviously pretty short. At number 13 is California Adventure's Mock Wild Mouse Goofy's Sky School. This is another very commonly cloned layout across parks all over the world, so it's not going to be ranked super highly due to that. It still definitely has more to offer than our previous 2 entrants, but it's still your basic janky Wild Mouse layout. The theme is actually very similar to Barnstormer, with Goofy taking you for a flight around the layout, but this one is more specific to the cartoon short with Goofy. It's definitely not as immersive of a theme as you would expect with Disney though, since this was a pretty cheap retheme of the original ride, Mulholland Madness. At number 12 is a slightly controversial take, Matterhorn Bobsleds at Disneyland. This is the oldest coaster I've ever been on, and you can really feel that during your ride. I mean, it's a piece of roller coaster history, with it being the first ever tubular steel roller coaster opening in 1959. It's also one of the jankiest coasters I've ever been on though, which makes it hard to rank super highly. Still, it's a lot better than our previous coasters on this list, and I hope it stays at the park for as long as possible. It has some fun laterals throughout the man-made mountain, and it's cool that there are 2 sides going through it as well. The splashdown at the end to slightly break the ride is also a nice touch, along with the Yeti terrorizing you throughout the ride, and this one does in fact move, unlike another Yeti on this list. At number 11 is another Disney classic, Big Thunder Mountain Railroad at Magic Kingdom. This is a really fun family coaster with great rockwork theming throughout the ride, and has some surprising airtime pops too. It does lack some other theming than its other Disneyland counterpart has, but the ride is going to undergo a major refurbishment soon, so it's possible added theming could be coming to this particular ride. Until then, I do think this is the lesser of the 2 Thunder Mountains, but it's still one of the best mine trains I've been on because of the great theming in Frontierland. At number 10 is of course Big Thunder Mountain at Disneyland. As I said before, this is a fun family mine train through the American West, but this one has 2 major theming upgrades that make it the better ride. One, it is an animatronic goat near the ride's second lift, which is amazing, and a great explosion effect on the final lift hill, which really builds suspense for the ride's finale. Another difference is the ride station and queue line are all pretty much entirely outside, due to there not being as much rain in California. Other than that, it's pretty much the same, but overall a very solid ride. At number 9 is another mine train at Magic Kingdom, Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. This family coaster has some really cool theming in the actual mine section of the ride, with animatronics of all the dwarfs and their iconic song going up the lift hill before the biggest drop. It's also glass smooth, with it being made by Vekoma in 2014, and has some very unique swinging carts as ride vehicles. Now, this ride still does get some of the biggest lines in the park, and while it is really fun, it is by no means worth a 2-hour plus wait. I'd recommend hitting this first thing or right after the fireworks, as there's usually no line at that time. At number 8 is another really fun family coaster at Hollywood Studios, Slinky Dog Dash. I was finally able to get on this during my last visit after 2 unsuccessful attempts, and while it isn't anything groundbreaking, it's a really fun ride. It's glass smooth, has some mild but fun launches, and a decently long layout. I truly think just about anyone can experience this ride with the forces it provides, but anyone can also have fun on this ride, from an enthusiast to someone who really doesn't like roller coasters. It does, however, get absurdly long lines, so I definitely try and plan to ride this first thing, especially since it can rain a lot since it's in Florida. At number 7 is another Hollywood Studios coaster, Rock and Roller Coaster. Now obviously this will soon become themed to the Muppets, which is exciting, but I will miss the current theme. It's just so cool to hear the classic Aerosmith songs playing while on a roller coaster, and I hope the Muppets theme will at least stick with the general rock and roll theme. The pre-show is also an all-time classic, so it's a shame that it will be going by the wayside too. Anyway, the actual layout is easily the most intense one Disney has ever done, with a punchy launch into 3 inversions throughout your ride, all while in an enclosed building with neon signs all around you. It is honestly a bit on the rough side though, but it's nothing too crazy. At number 6 is the newest Disney roller coaster in the US, Tron Lightcycle Run at Magic Kingdom. It was honestly so surreal going on this finally earlier this year, since I saw it being built for so incredibly long over the years, and now I finally ridden it. This coaster also holds a special place in my heart, with it being my 100th roller coaster. That being said, still a really cool ride with an amazing onboard soundtrack by Daft Punk during a ride and playing throughout the ride's canopy. This canopy is also extremely photogenic, and I took a billion photos of it while I walked up to the attraction. I wish that continued into the queue, because honestly that's fairly dull by their standards, but the ride itself has some really solid theming to make up for that. It is obviously a pretty short ride, but the launch is really punchy and the unique sitting position really adds to the fun factor of the ride. I do wish it had less breaks during your already short ride, and the restraints can honestly get pretty tight for the average rider. Still a fun ride and a great addition to the already great Magic Kingdom. At number 5 is another Disney classic, Space Mountain at Disneyland. This particular Space Mountain only has one side inside its building, with very smooth tracks since the 2005 refurbishment. This also features different overlays throughout the year, including Ghost Galaxy and Hyperspace Mountain themed around Star Wars, which I experienced during my visit. I don't really think it has much in the airtime department, especially compared to the Magic Kingdom version, but this one does really feel much faster around the track. The queue line is also way better, with the station being really cool, with the spaceship being right above your head. The onboard audio is also a nice touch that Magic Kingdom doesn't have, but the layout just doesn't compare. At number 4 is Animal Kingdom's one and only coaster, Expedition Everest. Once the most expensive coaster ever built, it's not hard seeing why. I mean, they built a scale model of the largest mountain in the world and put a roller coaster in it with one of the largest animatronics in there too. Now, as we all know, this Yeti does not actually move, and they use a strobing effect to trick you into thinking it's moved. Despite this quirk, it's still a fantastic ride, with a backwards section completely in darkness, an 80-foot drop right after, and an overall fulfilling ride duration. This is also the last Disney ride in the US parks to not be themed around an IP, so the story of the ride really takes shape in the queue line, with many different artifacts and stories of the Yeti. At number 3 is the superior Space Mountain, in my opinion, at Magic Kingdom. This lacks the cool queue line theming and onboard audio of Disneyland's, but the layout is way better. It legitimately has some of the strongest airtime of any coaster in their parks, and the only restraint is this tiny little T-bar, so you get launched out of your seat a bunch. All this happens in the pitch black darkness, of course, and this version features 2 sides. Both provide solid airtime, but the Alpha side really seems to throw you even more than the Omega for some reason, despite the layout literally just being mirrors of each other. At number 2 is the Disneyland Resort's best coaster, Incredicoaster at California Adventure. This is definitely the most intense coaster at the parks in California, with this being the only one that has launches and an inversion. That inversion is honestly my only knock on this ride, as it's really janky for some reason. Other than that is some solid drops and airtime hills along your over a mile-long track length. It also features a really solid launch along the water at the beginning of the ride. It also doesn't hurt that it is themed to one of the best animated films of all time, The Incredibles. Overall, it's just a really fun ride, but I do wish it had better theming with it being at a Disney park. And at number 1 is one of the newest coasters to grace the Disney World Resort, Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind. I've been fascinated with this ride ever since it was announced in 2017, as it wasn't a clone of any existing Disney coaster, and it was pretty mysterious in terms of what the layout would actually look like. It's also themed to one of my favorite superhero movies of all time, and the first Marvel ride to go to the Florida Disney parks. I was even more intrigued once we learned this had a backwards launch and spinning seats. Once I finally got to ride in 2023, I was blown away by the amazing theming, great soundtrack, and the unique forces that you got with the spinning ride vehicles. This ride would really be great with no theming due to its layout, but with the theming and the soundtrack, it makes this ride truly something special. I truly believe this is the best ride Disney has ever done, and easily makes my top 10 overall roller coasters ever. Do you agree with Guardians being the best US Disney roller coaster, or do you think it's overhyped? Post your thoughts in the comment section below, and be sure to subscribe for more content, and check out my reviews of most of the coasters throughout these 6 Disney parks.